Hello, today I'm excited to welcome a guest who brings creativity and passion to a unique field that blends art and thought. Ashton Rodenhiser is a creative entrepreneur who believes that drawing isn't just for artists, it's a tool anyone can use to think better and capture ideas visually. As a portrait photographer myself, I've always seen the power of visuals to tell stories. My sister, who used to do beautiful art, and my stepdaughter, she's an amazing artist, and her drawing is just breathtaking, have helped me appreciate the drawing in its many forms, right? But this is where it gets interesting. With over 2,500 presentations captured through her live drawing session, Ashton has proven that the visual note taking can make a huge impact in how we process and retain information. I'm excited to dive into this fascinating topic with her today, and let's welcome to the show Ashton.
Oh my gosh, I think that's one of my favorite introduction I've had in a long time. Thank you for that. Makes me sound so fancy and I love it. I love it.
I love your background, by the way. It's purple. It gives the sense of creativity and
Purple for life. Purple is the color. If your favorite color is purple, we'll be best friends. So
yeah, it's funny, that purple, it's kind of I can say my favorite color. Then my stone is not purple, I believe, for December. It's like, I think it's green. But my branding, it's black. Of course, I have to have black there. Gold and white. Somehow. I love that.
it's classy. It's good. It's
Can you share with us your journey of how you became passionate about using drawing as a thinking tool?
Yeah, so we'll go back to baby Ashton. As a child, I was very creative in lots of things and tried lots of different mediums. So, like, name a medium, and I've probably tried it at least for a day, for a week, or for a year. Um, and even though I was very creative and tried lots of things, I didn't really feel like being an artist was like a serious career path. And there was just so much, like lots of people in life, if you have a dream to be something that's a little, off the edge or stereotypically doesn't make a lot of money, all the things. I didn't even consider it, to be honest with you, because of just so much negative messaging around it. So after high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I ended up, after doing some education, working at a family center. And that's where I learned about facilitation. And I really fell in love with the world of facilitation and how you can bring people together to have a conversation or to learn something. But when you're facilitating rather than teaching, you might have things that you want people to take away from it, but it's ultimately a lot about what are the people thinking in the room? What are their wisdom? How can they share with each other? And I really liked this, this skill of creating a safe space and allowing people to really feel valued and heard and hear their own words. And as a facilitator, you hear what they're saying and you feed back to them in words. So I did that for a number of years and really loved it. Moved back to where I grew up and wanted to kind of start a family and wanted to try to stay connected to facilitation, but I didn't know what that looked like. Made some friends, and I had a friend say, well, there's this course coming up, which is like a one-day thing in the city around graphic facilitation. I had no idea what that was. But as like a little secret artist, I was like, ooh, this sounds like something I might like. And I took that one-day course, and honestly, it just changed the trajectory of my life. And that was, oh my gosh, October of 2013. So we're coming up to 11 years ago, which is pretty crazy. So I just started playing around with it and really seeing. I was facilitating a program at the time, and I just started throwing paper on the wall and drawing as people are talking, and I started to see how they interacted with it. I started to realize how much I could remember after, and I thought, this isn't just like a cutesy thing. Like this is quite a powerful tool, right? And that's when I really decided to go all in and be like, maybe I could do this full time. What would that look like? So that's how
Oh
I,
my God.
yeah.
That's how you end up here.
That's
That's so
then
awesome.
fast forward, yes, 10 years. Yeah.
And it's funny how, and we can go into social media and the business side of what you're doing, but it's funny how people show you their limitations. Oh, like you will never make money with art. And I
Hmm.
mentioned my stepdaughter. She's amazing. She draws. And she learned since she was little. Was always doodling and doing, like art. And she went to school and so on. And now she is an amazing tattoo artist.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. It's like,
I've thought about my work is like very tattoo artist friendly. I feel like because you're practicing lines all the time,
right.
it's like, I bet you I'd be really good. Like I like was Googling one night, like at midnight, like tattoo guns. Like this is how my brain works. Right? And I'm like,
Hey, I gave you
do
another
this.
idea.
I know.
Maybe,
I'm an
like,
ideas person, but yeah, I
yeah.
was like, I bet you like I think I could jump the learning curve a bit because I've like practiced like, like the lines so much and yeah, anyways, I'm yeah,
You
that's
can do
really
like the little
cool. That's
cute,
really
the little
cool.
small cute little, like I seen this girl that she does eyebrows and
Mm,
now she's doing like little tiny tattoos like like little hearts, or little shapes,
yeah,
tiny little things that she does. This is an extra service. Maybe somebody's doing
it is.
their thing, their eyebrows and things like that, and then boop, oh, I have a little tattoo.
That's so cute. I love that. That's the awesome.
Okay, so let's go to the benefits, right, of visual note taking. Because I've
Mhm.
seen this, I went to a seminar and this guy was just doing the presentation. And while he was doing the presentation, I was like, what does she mean like by live drawing sessions when I was going through your background? And I'm
Mhm.
like, and I was thinking about this guy and I'm like, oh, maybe that's what she means about live drawing sessions.
Mhm.
Maybe you can explain that a little. But he was giving this presentation and he was drawing, and then I was capturing all the details. And I'm like, that's amazing because I'm very
Yeah.
visual when I'm learning.
Mhm.
So for those unfamiliar with the concept of how can visual note taking improve the recall, retention, and focus
Yeah. I love that you had that experience. Like what he did is actually wildly challenging to present and draw at
at
the
the
same
same
time.
time?
It's very, very difficult. So good for him for doing that. Usually when I get asked to do this as work is there's people in the room having a conversation or there's a presentation that is happening at a conference and I do it like either I'm integrated, maybe it's a facilitated session and I'm like a part of it a bit more and I am directing a little bit, but mostly focusing on really being almost like the listener and capture of what's being said or what's being presented. So that's why I'm like that guy. He's special because he can do both at the same time, which is very, very difficult to do. But in terms of like I'm going to give you kind of a bit of a random example, but it's the best one that I like to share. So imagine you are a school teacher and you have two students, and there's one student that is just writing down a bunch of words, and there's one student that is doing visual note taking. So there's words there, there's little drawings, there's little icons, there's little arrows that are pointing to information, and you're looking over the shoulder of these two students at the same time. Which one would you notice or be able to see and evaluate their learning? Right? If you just see a sheet of words, you have no idea what this student actually took in and learned, right? Because unfortunately, we learned how to take notes, like frantically writing down everything you hear, trying to memorize it for a test, and then you forget it right after the test is over, right? But if you look over the shoulder of the student that did the visual note taking, you can see the connections that that student made in their mind. where they captured something big, which might have been a bigger idea for them, or a little icon that kind of helped represent that concept. And then it allows for a conversation or clarification, or maybe even like a redirection and be like, oh, actually, like this is really important to this idea. And you can do that right in the moment. So, visual note taking can be taken and can be done in the classroom, in the boardroom, like anywhere's from, a 12-year-old student trying to learn, something about the world, or a CEO in a major 500 company that is trying to explain a complicated concept to the stakeholders in the room, right? And everywhere kind of in between. Because visuals in can bridge connection and build understanding, right? Let alone like helping you focus. And the memory retention is actually one of my favorite ones. Like doodling alone, not even doing any visual note taking, but doodling in its own right can help you remember up to 29% more information. Just doodling, not even making them it purposeful, right? So visual note taking, or sketchnoting as it's commonly known, is about, you're going to take those doodles. Doodles are great. I almost consider myself a doodling advocate, actually. Doodle. Take those doodles and make them more meaningful, make them purposeful, make them connected to what you're learning. So,
I love that. Like right now, my brain was just going like doodling because
yay.
I was talking. I don't remember who I was in a meeting, and the way I think also sometimes is that I do my mind mapping.
Yeah.
And for me, that's so easy. I used to, when I, like, by the time I'm spelling like big words in English or Spanish, by the time I'm finishing, it's like, oh, the whole presentation is over and I'm still trying
Yeah.
to spell different. So sometimes I used to, do signs. And so I do mind mapping. So sometimes I just do a word and I connect words. So for somebody that is, let's break some of the barrier, right? What advice will you have for somebody that says, I can draw for my life, I can do nothing, but it is interested in incorporating visual elements into their notes?
Yeah. I like that you mentioned mind mapping, because it is a question that I get quite often, or I feel like that's how people sort of relate to it the closest. And I love a good mind map, but mind mapping I find it has a structure to it. Whereas where I love visual note taking or sketchnoting, because it's so free form. It doesn't have to follow a certain structure. So I actually see mind mapping as more of like a template and a way of capturing in a very particular way, which can be very useful, absolutely.
Interesting.
But for visual note taking and sketchnoting, it's a little bit more. You can do what you want. There's less rules, right? It's a little bit more open. Um, when I teach it to people, I actually really love it when someone says, I can't draw. Like I take that as a personal challenge, and I'm like, give me 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, you're going to be like, oh, maybe I can draw. And like with sketchnoting and visual note taking, like the information is still always going to be really, really important, right? So there is a whole element of it that is like, the synthesization, and when you hear something like, picking out the main ideas, like that's a skill in itself that needs to kind of be learned, because we're not necessarily born with like wonderful listening skills. Like I'm sure there's someone in your life that they're not the best listener in the whole world, right? Like it's a skill that has to be developed.
Right.
But when it comes to the drawing aspect, I literally start with encouraging people to draw a line. It doesn't have to be a straight line. It can be a wiggly line. It can be a zigzag line. It can be a wavy line. And when I teach the elements, like something like we start with like a line, I like to also teach the why behind it. Why do we draw a line? Right. So because if I just gave you a piece of paper and I said, do a visual note, you'd be like, you wouldn't even know where to start. Right. So you can do like a line is very versatile. So you can connect information on a page. You can show, like, let's say you captured something and then you captured like information, and then you captured information on the opposite side of the page, but you realize later they belong together, but they live on the other side of the page. You can take a line and draw a line in between them, or even put little things at the end to turn it into an arrow. Now all of a sudden they belong together, even though they live far apart, right? So you can make a line to connect information. You can do it the opposite to separate. If there was information close together and is actually two separate ideas, you can, stick a line in between it and show separation. You can highlight or spark it, like this you really want when you're referring to it later for something to pop off and really capture your attention. Throw a few lines around it or under it, and all of a sudden that is brought to life a little bit more. And a pretty important in our last one is like showing direction or flow of information. So, I actually really love like popcorn style, just like kind of capturing things all over my page. But oftentimes I'll end up putting a line where the information was, started here, then it went here, then it went here. And sometimes when you're capturing information, you don't necessarily need to know the direction or flow. It was just a bunch of ideas, and those ideas were great, but it didn't really, the order didn't matter. But if it does matter, then you can use a line to show the flow of that information. So just with some words and different uses of lines, you could create a very, not just like aesthetically pleasing and nice looking note now, like a sketch note, but it's impactful, it's meaningful, right? You didn't have to capture all the things, but you focused on the main ideas and you use lines to do that. And then we usually now take a line and turn it into a square, and now it's a container, and now you can have all these different things that you can use with a container, and then drawing people and all of these things, right? So it's just about taking these basic shapes, changing them around, understanding why you're using them, and there you go. Easy peasy.
That's awesome. So I'm here just imagining you taking notes and doing all these doodles and all this, like I was at another meeting and this girl, I wonder if that was you. So after, after the seminar was done, she sent her notes and it was like 3 pages of notes. And I immediately went like, holy cow, because it was drawing. She even put like the face of the person, and
Perfect.
then she
Yeah.
will do like this, and I'm like, oh well, she's an artist, and that's
Yeah.
why I had the question because it's
Yeah.
like I want to make that little face when I'm drawing, and I think that's where we get stuck.
Yeah.
We want to make the perfect drawing and the person and not like a little stick figure, like with the little circle and the little sticks like going this way.
Mhm.
So we are striving for perfection.
Yeah.
So let's go to the science behind this. Can you talk about some of the studies or research that support the cognitive benefits of visually capturing notes?
hmm Yeah. So I already gave you my favorite stat. That's my favorite
But
one.
this is for the skeptical who's still
Skeptical.
saying, like, but that's not enough for me. So let's
Right
give
on.
them a little more.
Yeah. So there is something called the dual coding theory where our brains are like, they're kind of in two parts. There's the verbal part and then there's the visual part. So, but when you take the verbal part and the visual part and you pair them together, studies show that that can enhance your learning, right? So, but a lot of times we're in situations where it's all verbal, and there may be people that have some great PowerPoint slides and add in a visual part, and maybe it's impactful and you helps you remember. But sometimes we don't always pair them together like we would in a visual note, where we take the information and we embed it around a visual, right? So this it's Alan Pavio's kind of dual coding theory that really solidifies this idea of, if you want to remember information, if you want to like deeply learn something and not just like hear something, write it down for a test, like I mentioned earlier, and then forget about it. It's that like deeper understanding of that learning. Um, it's also fun. It's also a very fun way to capture notes, like you experienced in that email, which sounds like very similar, right? To a sketchnoting kind of way of working. And there's the cliches like a picture's worth 1,000 words and all of that. Now, technically, learning styles have been debunked. Technically, the science has shown that learning styles aren't really a thing. But,
Oh, boomer.
dot, dot, dot. You said in the beginning, I like to learn visually. So people still relate to it, even if some scientists said that it's not really a thing.
Well,
So,
which it might be true. Well, obviously, if it's
I
science,
know
because
that's the
I
thing.
have like a combination. Sometimes, like I visually can see it, then I have to listen, then
Yeah.
I write it down, and I think that's a combination, right? Maybe that's why
Yeah.
the science proof to debunk
Yeah.
that.
And I think your learning styles can evolve. I believe personally and anecdotally that most people have a preferred way. So that's like that is honestly the number
Preferences.
one thing that people come to me and say when I'm working in person. Because usually when I'm in person, like imagine like a giant wall like covered in paper and I'm doing it like live and giant so people really see it in a room. And that's the number one thing that people come up to me and say, like, oh, I love this. I'm a visual learner, right? And I'm not going to be like, well, science. I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's great.
It's like we
You
have to
know,
label everything.
yes, exactly. And I say, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world for a reason because we would rather see someone make that chicken pot pie rather than try to read it, go through the recipe and figure it all. You'd rather watch someone make it than to try to decipher something. And I also think it kind of works to our advantage when we think about our like impatience or our way, like the instant gratification, right? And you can look at a sketch note and be like, less than 20 seconds, it takes you back to that conversation. The little neurons in your brain are firing with the memories, and you're like, oh, right, I remember this. And now you can actually take action on it. Whereas, how many times have people been to a conference and they take reams and books of notes just to shove it in a drawer, never to be seen again, right? Whereas the sketch notes are so wonderful because they're nice to look at. You want to refer to them, right? Even if it's messy and weird, it's still, more fun to look at than just like random words on a piece of paper that you don't know where the connections are, right? So I guess I spoke more anecdotally there for a moment, but there's some science as well. Unfortunately, of course, just like everything, there's not enough research that is done, but there has been research that has been done out of some universities around working with students, like, they say a word and then they draw a word. Which ones do they remember? Like drawing always wins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. That's amazing. Like when you were saying that the recipe, like sometimes I'm watching a YouTube recipe and it's like, wait, let me rewind. What did he do there? And then
Mhm.
I go back and there was a TikTok this lady was doing and she threw away the recipe and then she goes back to the garbage can just to look for the recipe. And I'm like, you should have gone to YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not universal and it's not going to be for everybody, and people who
Right.
feel like they need to have every single word written down, maybe it's not for you. But from my experience and being able to create a business around this, it really speaks to the majority of the people in the room, especially those who have a hard time sitting and listening, ADHD, have different neurospiciness, as like that seems to be the term right now, like neurodiversity.
Yeah.
It can be really helpful for not just everybody, but from an accessibility lens too, right?
Yeah. So let's go to the practical ways. So what are some ways? I don't have many students listening to my podcast. I could be wrong, but or professionals or even executives or entrepreneurs
Yeah.
can start using visual note taking in their
Mm.
daily routines. How can we incorporate this to daily
Yeah.
routines?
So I really like, I actually kind of feel like my business isn't like necessarily visual note taking. It's more about understanding, building understanding, and breaking down complexity. So you're having a hard time explaining a concept. Like, let's say you're an entrepreneur and you are a website designer and you're on a call with someone who might hire you to build a website. Why not actually draw out as they're talking and then use that to reflect back? You said this. Is this what you're looking for? Or actually start drawing out like the first page. Be like, oh, well, maybe we could do this, this, and this, right? Like that's not just a differentiator, but that's like listening at the highest level because you're literally doing it and you're showing them what it looks like to work with you. You're like, one of my business coach told me there's no true objection. They just don't know what's on the other side of that decision. So, what can you do to show them what is on the other side of that decision? Right. So if you're on a call, you could even just be drawing it out and or you show it to them then, or it's a beautiful way to do a follow-up call. Hey, this conversation was really important to me. Here's the notes that I took. And they don't even have to be beautiful, right? You could just do what I said earlier, draw the words, draw some lines. Like it doesn't have to be fancy to show the person like, wow, they really listened to me. They really understand the problem that it is that I'm trying to solve. Right. So I know I went very like business focused there for a second, but I think
That's
anytime
good. I
like
have a lot of
like
business owners here.
yeah. Like there is like very there's even like records of like US presidents who, people found their doodles on like a bar napkin, right? Like because our it, it's I believe it's like our natural way of being and thinking, but for whatever reason we really started focusing on words. And I noticed that with my own kids going through school was all they used drawings to explain the words before they were able to write out the words properly, right? They used the story to tell the picture and the words supported it. Now it's more, we're going to write the words and the drawings are going to support the words, but the drawings are taken out. So it seemed like a very strict like shift with my children is like, oh yeah, all those drawings you did for like the first 3 years of your school, we're going to get get rid of those completely. And I think we're doing students a huge disservice. And this is why we have adults walking around thinking they can't draw or they couldn't use this very powerful thinking tool and communication tool because somewhere along the way is like, oh my gosh, can I remember this stat? But Brene Brown talks about like creativity scars. And I can't remember the stat. I think it's 85%. People can correct me, but a high percentage of people have creativity scars, which happened in school, which means someone told them their writing wasn't any good, or that they couldn't dance, or that their painting sucked, or whatever it is. So then we take these creativity scars into our adulthood. And that's why we have a whole bunch of adults walking around being like, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. And I'm like, but you were at one point. There was just a really high chance that you actually have a creativity scar and someone tore down. And once you have that conversation with people, 9 times out of 10, people actually tell me their story because they remember it. Like I remember mine, grade 4, my teacher told me I was painting wrong, right? I was kind of all over the place and she wanted me to go in like
Going
one
out of the line.
going, yeah, right. So I remember mine, and it didn't completely, um, take it away from me, but I did other things, but I didn't paint. I didn't paint until I was like well into my 20s. I didn't pick up painting, and I loved painting up until that point, right? So I just thought, oh, well, I'm not a painter. I can't paint, right? Even though she never said you can't paint, it's like you're doing this wrong. Like, who's to say to, what are you when you're in grade 4? Like, well, my he's in grade 4, so like 8 or 9 years old, right? Like, so, anyways, I just got on my soapbox about all that, and thank you for coming to me.
No, but it's true. It's like at that early age, instead of striving for perfection, not to take it out of the line. I mean, what is the goal that we're teaching a kindergarten, that not to draw outside the line?
Mhm.
Like we're teaching them so young, like you have to strive for perfection. If it's not perfect, it's not good. You're not good
Ex-
enough.
Exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Wow.
there's so many different use cases. Like I know a woman, I'm in Canada, she's on the other side of Canada, and she uses it in her mediation business, bringing two people together and allowing them to like really feel seen and heard. Like there's just so many different ways that you can kind of use drawing as thinking as a communication tool, as a business differentiator. There's lots of opportunities. Like we're only limited by our own imagination.
Yeah. And you were talking about, the giving the example with the graphic design or web design. That's my background in web design.
Okay,
I was like,
okay. I feel like
oh,
I should have
she's
known
taking
this.
me back she's taking me back in time. I love it.
Yay, I didn't
So let
even know.
And another thing that you mentioned was about the rejection. My
Mhm.
mentor usually says that a no is not a rejection. It's just a call for more information.
Yeah.
So do not take that no as a rejection. Just come back and show them your drawings.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, of course, but it can be a really powerful way of helping communicate complexity in particular, or showing people what's on the other side of a decision, or there's so many use cases for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if it's not for a client, it can also help you. Like if entrepreneurs, right?
Can I give an example
Stress
actually? Can I give
releases
you?
also.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be like a health and wellness like thing as well. I had an experience a while back with my one of my children at the dentist, and I was so my little heart was just like so happy because the dental hygienist, she was trying to, I can't even remember what she was trying to explain now, but I remember the little drawing in my mind. She grabbed a piece of paper and she drew like some teeth and described what was going on. And I'm like, oh
Oh,
my gosh, like how like beautiful that. And of course, my little like doodly heart just like burst wide open, like the Grinch, his heart gets like 2 times bigger. Like my little doodle heart got so big. And, so not just explaining complexity and that's just another example of like real world day-to-day living where it doesn't have to be this big fancy thing, but it can be something where, you know, you think about it. It's like, oh, I'm trying to explain this thing. How do I explain it? It was like, why don't I draw it? Right. But when I went off about the creativity skies, we have to believe that we can first. And that drawing isn't like an art form necessarily, like it can be, absolutely, but it doesn't have to be, but it can be a tool that you can learn some skills around, get back into it a little so that when you are in a situation where you're trying to explain something, you're like, oh yeah, I can draw this out. Right.
yeah. You're not trying to do the next Mona Lisa or
Yeah.
the next art piece that is going to sell for millions. You're just
Yeah.
explaining something to communicate better with your client. So was that the example that you were going to give us?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Or
cool.
I
I'm like,
interrupted you. Well, I interrupted you to tell
no,
them.
I'm like,
But
I
yeah.
interrupted her before she was going to give the example, but
Yeah, there
it
you
worked
go.
out beautifully.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
just
let's
thought
talk
of it when we were talking about different ways of using it.
So let's talk a little bit about technology because the first example that I gave you about the guy that did it live, he was using his iPad. And on the
Mm.
iPad, there's this app. I forgot the name of the app right now. Let me see if I can. I think it's Draw or, well, oh, it's here. I think it's called Freeform. um, and you can doodle there. So, how has technology shaped the world of visual note taking? Do you recommend any digital tools for beginners?
Yeah, so great question. So I when I teach people how to do it, I actually encourage people to do pen and paper first because it's the most accessible. So I'm like, if you don't have an iPad or you don't have whatever, like, don't worry about it. Pen and paper is fine. You can always go to a digital
Old
tool
school.
later. Old school is great. I always say like a broken crayon and a ripped piece of paper is like literally all you need to, I love leaning in on the accessibility aspect of it. Like you literally don't need very much. You probably have a piece of paper and a broken crayon laying around that you could try. So I always like to mention that first. But yeah, technology has come a long way when it comes to drawing on digital surfaces. And I work with some people that don't love drawing on paper and really love the flexibility that digital provides. You can make something big and small and move it around. And I actually have a really interesting technology journey in my business because prior to March of 2020, and we all know what happened in March of 2020, I was 100% on paper. I was flying all over the place. I was bringing my giant roll of paper under my arm wherever I went, with my fancy markers, and it was all in person. It was all paper. And then ding, ding, ding. It's like, you can't do that anymore. What are you going to do for your business? So I really had to pivot very quickly to be how can I serve clients and maybe see what other opportunities are out there now for clients by being able to do something digitally. So, technology is a beautiful thing. And, on Monday I was in Las Vegas, but I wasn't. I was in Canada because I
I was
was
like,
like,
oh,
who
you travel now.
no, I wasn't. I was like, disheveled, unwashed hair, in my studio space, drawing around a cybersecurity conference. But they took my drawing screen and pulled the feed and put it on a screen in the room in Las Vegas.
Wow.
So everyone in the room, plus the thousand of people online, because it was hybrid, were able to see my drawings unfold during the presentations, right? So it's it's a beautiful thing where you can kind of like be doing this kind of thing and also be somewhere else in the world, or someone else can experience the benefit without having to sit physically with you in a room. Being in the room is always really nice if they're conversations facilitated, like strategic planning and all that is really important to be in a room where people are having like intense discussions. But for conferences and things, it's such a wonderful way of working. I'm actually a Microsoft gal, and I use a program called Sketchbook Pro, and I use a program called ManyCam that it tricks my computer into thinking that my drawing screen in Sketchbook Pro is actually my camera. And
Oh,
so
cool.
that's how I use it for these different conferences and things when they want me to be there virtually. And then it's great. And then I literally, after the presentation is done, I'm done because I work super fast, and boom, boom, save the file, thrown in a Dropbox folder, and then now they can share it and email it out to all of the attendees. For iPad users, Procreate seems to be the most popular program that people like, but there's the other two popular ones are Concepts and Adobe Fresco. I would say those are the most common ones that I come across. But at the end of the day, the drawing program really doesn't matter. um, because they all have their little intricacies, they all have their pros and
Right.
cons. But I honestly use Sketchbook Pro very minimally because of the speed, the way that I do it for clients. Here's a half an hour, boom, boom. Like this has to be done in a half an hour because the next presentation is about to start. So I can't actually use all of the robustness of these programs, anyways. So usually I just tell people pick one and practice it because the learning curve of drawing on a slippery surface is it can be tricky to get used to. So the program really doesn't matter. So just pick one and play around with it and give it a good try before you try a different one. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter about the program. It's about like getting comfortable with drawing digitally. And there's like surface protectors for iPads that kind of make it feel like paper. I haven't really played around with those actually myself, because I actually draw on a very large, it's called the Surface Studio. It's like a very, very large screens, like basically drawing on a little mini TV screen, because I was struggling with the kind of like hunching over a little device for hours
So
and
it's
hours
standing up
on.
a little. So you
Yeah, and
stand it up.
I can pivot it, I can move it around, and it's my all-in-one device. I like all-in-one devices. So it's nice, because when it's over, I can boom boom, get into Slack, post the thing, do whatever I need to do, and kind of go on from there. So I'm not sure, I don't know if that was what you were looking for in your question, but hopefully that's helpful.
This is amazing because my brain just is going just all over the place, thinking of all the possibilities. Like I never thought that this could actually be a business. I
I
remember
know.
when I started, the web design. It's like my friend was more into the graphic part, and I was into the pretty stuff, making the back end look pretty visually. I, of course, also, my goodness, my tongue today. Also, it was like the pretty stuff. As a photographer, I draw sometimes my poses so
Mm,
that my clients are mostly women. They
mm,
don't compare themselves with whoever I'm putting, on the whatever I lay down for them. I
yeah.
lay out for them, and it's like, okay, we're gonna do this for efficiency. We're gonna do this, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, so that's how you. Okay, this is how it's gonna
Mm.
go. But what I was saying, I don't know why I got distracted with this. I'm like,
No, I love it. I
okay,
love that story. I think that's so beautiful because you're doing it to like also honor them and make them feel like secure and
comfortable,
yeah,
right? And
I
it's
love
like, don't
that.
compare yourself. You're beautiful in your own way, but I don't want to put a paper with Angelina Jolie on a
Yeah,
certain pose that I really like and I want to try. If you
yeah.
look as beautiful as her, but you have your thoughts of limitations,
Mhm.
or and I was where I was going with the limitations is like what you said at the beginning, artists don't make money, and you
Mhm.
built a business with this, and the possibilities are just endless. Now with
Mhm.
technology, you pivot with technology, and now I'm thinking
Yeah.
now with AI. Like everybody's freaking out with AI, and sometimes, yeah, they're using a lot of like photographers. They're using a lot of their photos, to train the AI, and there's so many crazy things that are happening. But at the same time, you cannot let that limit you how you serve other people. So my question for you on this one is, of the 2,500 presentations you've captured, do any stand out as particularly challenging or impactful? And you were talking about the conference in Las Vegas. I don't know if that's one of them, but
Oh my gosh, that is so interesting. Honestly, the amount of mental capacity it takes to do like multiple in a day, it's very like I'm kind of like a pile of goo at the end of the day because you can't, if you're in the room or even digital, you can, oh, I gotta go let the dog out, or oh, I wonder what we're gonna make for supper, or like you can let your mind wander, and I can't let my mind wander. So, in saying that, unless I look at one of the works that I do, I don't actually hold on to a lot of the information in my brain because it's impossible to hold on to over 2,500 presentations and all the information in my brain, right? Like I do not have the mental capacity. The things that stick with me the most and the ones that are the most memorable are the ones where I I had people come and tell me the impact it had on them. Someone who said, I've worked here for 40 years and no one's ever asked me how I felt before. You're like, oh, like the honoring spaces. I do a lot in like indigenous spaces as well. Like here in Canada, it's like, truth and reconciliation is very important and, working towards that. And I feel like so honored when I'm invited into those types of spaces. So I tend to like when it's like really like in my heart, like when there's more heart work in it, those are the ones that I tend to remember the most. Those are ones that kind of leave like a lasting impact on me, whether or not I remember all the information from it. Those are the experiences. Like, so it's like it's almost feels weird sometimes. You're like, I'm getting paid to like have this like magical experience. Like I did one back in May, and it was bringing Parks Canada people together with Indigenous people, and this woman was talking about they were doing a water ceremony, and we're down by the ocean, and it's beautiful, and she's talking about an eagle feather and how she believes the creator will give her an eagle feather when she's ready, and then literally an eagle just like swoops down really low, and then kind of just over our heads in a way. And we all just like look at each other and we're like, did that just happen? Like, is this real life? Like someone pinched me. Like you can't like those types of experiences are just so like impactful, not just to me as like a someone who does this work and trying to honor what people are saying, but also from like a really heart-centered place as well. So, and in terms of like the AI, it's such an interesting thing. Like, I might change my tune tomorrow, but as of today, I am not concerned about my work necessarily because as long as people need to gather and hear each other and see each other and connect with each other and be human to human to each other, I'll always have a job. So I'm personally not worried about it. So I think like same with photography and all these things, like if you are allowing people to see, feel seen, I think that personally, we'll see if I'm right. I think that will be the new wave of work. Like that, those are going to be the jobs that AI can't take. Those are the ones that people are really going to be gravitating towards. They're the ones that are like happy to pay that, so these human to human. And the reason why I believe that is because we got so good at doing things virtually, right? We've had a lot of practice at this point. But why are people still meeting a person? Like, as soon as things like restrictions were lifted, it seemed like all of a sudden there was a flood of in person events, right? Why did we do that? Because we know the importance of being together, building community together, and connecting with one another. Right. So I think if you're in that kind of industry where, someone could be like, oh, well, I'm sure there'll be an AI thing like build me a website. Like maybe there is one now. I don't know. Like as someone who is like a very small business, like I would rather work with someone. Like, no, I want to talk to someone so they can understand the things that I need. The message, like this is a very specific message I'm trying to convey to potential clients that I need to make sure that it gets communicated correctly and I attract the right people, the people who care about people in the room and not just like checking a box or like if someone wants me to be there for like the cool factor, I'm not your person. There's way better illustrators out there than me that could create a more beautiful picture. But I'm there as my job to bring people together and allow them to see those connections and care about the learning, right? Which doesn't always end up being the most beautiful picture in the world because conversations are messy, which means sometimes the visual is messy. It is what it is, right?
Yeah, we were never meant to do life alone. We always crave community. We're always gonna crave
Exactly.
that. And I think that's where we need to use this are just tools that we can
Exactly.
use to our advantage. But I don't think they will ever be able to replace you. I don't think.
Hmm.
I might be wrong. But we're always gonna crave that human.
Yeah.
Machines will never be a human.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're gonna hug, like if you're lonely and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna buy one of these machines, like they're gonna be able to hug me and listen to me with the responding to me, just listen. When you hug the thing, it's gonna be like really
It
messed
doesn't
up.
have a heart. You need that heart to heart when you're hugging. You got to get right on the
Yeah.
heart. Yeah.
What is one thing you stopped apologizing for that helped you go to the next level in your entrepreneurship, your business, or, well, your business, because
Oh, interesting. What is one thing I stopped apologizing for? Well, I'm Canadian. That's really hard to answer. Like that are we not known for saying sorry about everything? Like I walked on someone in the bathroom and I said sorry. I was like, this is the most Canadian thing I've ever done in my life. Um, I'm gonna do like a non-answer. I'll just tell you a little anecdote. I think like when I started my business, I really had to do a lot of mindset shift to break through this like starving artist mentality. I was like, I'm not gonna be successful if I believe that yeah, I believe that artists are starving, like that sort of rhetoric. So I think I really stopped apologizing for, the worth of the work, the pricing of it. Like, this is valuable, it helps people. It did take quite a bit of time and experience to get there, but I'm pretty unapologetic about the way that I work now. Like I literally get on calls with people and I'm like, if you're not fun, then you're not my client. And then they're trying to convince me they're fun enough. And I'm like, that's great. That's a great place to be because I don't want to like the work that I do is it's not just doing a service, it's my creativity. I have to be in a right headspace, and if I don't feel respected, if I don't feel like this is a good match, I can't show up. So I think I just like stopped apologizing, and I think the mindset work of all of that really helped me to kind of persevere and push through, because it was pretty difficult those first few years trying to get my footing and trying, dealing with rejections, like you said, and those no's and what those no's mean. Because when you do creative work, it's like you feel like they're saying no to your creativity,
right.
not just the service. So I think I'm finally at a place now, which I'm really glad to kind of be on the other side of that, where I'm not apologizing, or saying yes, but to things that, like I know I have enough experience, I have enough client stories and adventures to know that this work is really valuable and it's worthy of high compensation, right? Because it's not just showing up and doing something, but it's my creativity and the energy and compassion that I bring to projects as well. So yeah.
Right. And your time is important. And time is the most valuable. We don't get that back. And
Exactly.
I love what you said, not attaching the but after. Like, like
Mhm.
drop it there. Like you are
Yeah.
and it went out of my head because you mentioned something else that I wanted to touch a little bit on that, but now I don't remember because I was thinking about
Okay.
the no.
You got stuck on the no. Yes,
I got
it's
stuck in the no, but that's amazing. I love that. And good for you. Your time is valuable and you have kids also. Oh, where I was going is like not only are you giving that service, that time, but you're running a business. You have to pay taxes. You have to pay. It's not like I don't know in Canada whether you don't pay taxes, but here
Oh,
in the
it's very.
US.
I live in almost one of the highest tax places in Canada. So
You see,
yes,
like we
very tax.
have to pay
Yes.
taxes, and
Yeah.
it's not just a little thing that you're selling. For us photographers, it was like they see prices on labs, let's say, and it's like they're thinking that they're just paying for the $3, $5, $10 paper, but it's not the paper that you're paying for. It's the experience, it's the time
Yeah.
and everything involved. And for business owners, you have to make a profit if you want to be in business. And that is
Exactly.
something that it took me a hard time to to
Yeah.
oh my god,
Yeah,
yeah,
and not apologizing for your pricing and knowing that,
exactly.
and like I come with like 10 years experience now and my pricing should reflect that. And I have people that go with a cheaper option and that's fine, but I know the experience that I bring to this. And so it's not just that I'll do the service, but I have like all the background and history
Mhm.
that you bring to it, right? So and that is worth something for sure.
Yeah, you just have to let them go with love.
Yes.
Ashton, thank you so much. Like I said, I could talk to you forever. This is a very interesting topic from one artist to the other.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Love
sharing your incredible insights today. I love where can people find you and connect with you to learn more about how they can transform their life, their processes, retain information. I'm sure
Yeah.
our listeners are feeling like, oh man, I need to get a pen and paper to start exploring the world.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I do have two businesses, but I'll just focus on one. One is Mind's Eye Creative, and that's kind of like hiring me to do things. But really, if people are looking to kind of learn and see what this looks like for them, everything's Sketchnote School. Sketchnote School YouTube, Sketchnote School Instagram, Sketch Note. So the word sketch note put together. Dot school is the website. And I wrote a book last year, published it, the beginner's guide to sketchnoting. We talk about the lines and all the things. And I have an online community. There's a paid, but also a free part of the community. And I have 900 people from all around the world. I just checked last week. I like crossed the 900 mark, and that was very exciting. And we
Congratulations on
share
both.
sketch notes. Yeah, we share sketch notes. You get to see how other people are using sketchnoting in their lives and in their work, which is really fun. So, that channel is included in our free. We call it the playground because it's school, so there's playground in the classroom. So you can join the playground for free and hang out and just kind of like, take some. There's some free resources and little mini trainings in there that people can just sort of get comfortable with the idea. There's even a little one in there called Draw Your First Sketch Note. So
Hmm.
that's really fun for people to kind of play around because I find that is one of the biggest barriers, right? We talked about earlier. It's
Right.
just doing it. So lots of resources that people can take advantage of. All things Sketchnote School. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And all the links will be provided on the show notes of this episode so that everyone can go and check it out and see how easy you make it look and you make it also in practice to I'm gonna go dig in a little to see if I can get back to my sketching too.
There you
No,
go.
how to incorporate this with my mind mapping because sometimes it's like I love the explanation you gave how mind mapping is more of a structure and like maybe is that true because sometimes I feel like I doodle too much and I need a little structure in my life. Now you
Mhm.
make me think about that now.
Okay, that's good. I'll leave you with some thoughts. You let me know how you make out with them.
Ashton, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today, and I can't wait to see where your journey with visual thinking takes you next. You have pivot through the pandemic, then technology, now with AI.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really had such a great time chatting with you today.
Yeah, it was great.